think maybe more than any other movie, The Farewell's just one of my all-time favorites. The story follows Billy, a young, headstrong Chinese-American woman who lives alone in New York City. Though she hasn't lived in China since she was a young girl, she has a strong bond with her Chinese grandmother, her Nai Nai.
Nai Nai.
Really?
But tragedy strikes when her parents reveal to her that her Nai Nai has been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and is expected to have about 3 months to live. But then there's a catch.
She doesn't know.
Her family chooses not to tell Nai Nai about her illness. And instead they hastily conduct a fake wedding for her eldest grandson as an excuse for everyone to see Nai Nai one last time. It opens with a lot of dramatic setup, but then the rest of the film consists primarily of crowded family gatherings. Big meals with lots of delicious food, Tai Chi, karaoke, and most importantly, Billy and Nai Nai getting to spend quality time together. The film is the epitome of warmth and kindness, juxtaposed with underlying grief and frustration. What's peculiar about this particular film is that nothing about it jumps out as particularly showy or excessively spectacular in any sort of way. Naysayers will tell me that nothing happens in the movie, that the film concludes and nothing changes, that there's no character growth, there's no moment where everything is revealed and the ruse falls apart into chaos. But that's why I love it. It's a film that doesn't try too hard to be overly remarkable. Rather, the film is quiet and soft-spoken. It's an anomaly for me. It's my go-to answer to the world's most challenging question of all time. What is your favorite film? This film right here from 2019 about a culture that I have no personal connection to and a scenario I can't personally relate to. The reason it's my favorite is because writer-director Lulu Wang knew that the premise that she had was one that she mustn't delve into carelessly. What Lulu had on her hands was not only a film that was important as a form of representation for people like her, but a film that could transcend cultural barriers. To answer the question that lay dormant in her mind, and the question that you will be left to ponder before you begin the film and even by the end. Why do we lie? The film begins with a line of text that reads, based on an actual lie. As absurdly immoral as the premise of not telling your poor innocent grandmother that they are in fact going to die seems to most Western eyes, trust me, when I first watched the trailer for the film, I was confused. Why would someone do this? Why would someone lie? Immediately, I sympathize for Billy. But what's interesting about the film is that it actually happened. The film is based on an actual lie. Lulu, the director, is Billy. This exact scenario, from the lie to the wedding, it all actually happened.
When my grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, she was given 3 months to live. She was 80 years old, and my family decided not to tell her. I was totally against this.
Even in Lulu's true experience of visiting her Nai Nai one last time, what became an apparent coping mechanism for her was seeing the scenario as a film.
I started filming as soon as I landed. I brought the camcorder with me to hide behind, hoping it would help me to keep it together.
Perhaps to her, seeing the events play out as though it were a movie was the very lie she needed to tell herself to handle the weight of the circumstance. It was going through this experience from both the unique American perspective on the situation and her filmmaking background that she knew for a fact that she wanted to make it into a film. But it would take a long time before she got to tell the story that she wanted to tell. Hollywood studios were confused as to whether the film was a Chinese one or an American one. Who was the target demographic? Why make it subtitled? You're making a foreign film. Pushing her into a corner to make essentially what would amount to becoming a Chinese version of My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And when she instead went to Chinese studios to pitch her film, she ran into another issue. They didn't think that Billy should be the main character because Chinese audiences simply aren't going to relate to an American protagonist. So on a meta level, what's special about this film is that, like Billy and like Lulu, the film itself is inherently Chinese American and holds a very unique perspective and bears the same stigma that Chinese American people deal with on a day-to-day basis. The film isn't Chinese enough, nor is it American enough. It wasn't being accepted either way. And I think Lulu eventually discovered that this was likely the biggest strength of her film. And so, after the trials and tribulations of pitching this picture, Lulu eventually got to make her film. Billy, our main character, and from a purely Western lens, the character we undoubtedly side with. The character who doesn't quite understand the culture.
Sir, how do you say congratulations, Dad?
恭喜
恭喜，好好一个。
The outsider who asks the same questions that we have. Why can't we tell her? Why do we lie? The film's message can't exist without its strong portrayal of characters. And what each of these characters represent within the film is crucial to the story. Billy is introduced to us as a character who prides herself in her independence. She lives in the bustling city of New York, where she lives completely on her own. She has a nice apartment, and though she has money problems, she doesn't want to move out. She's unable to keep a job.
What happened, girl? You got fired. I quit.
And quits when things get too hard. And to make matters worse, she hasn't been accepted into a prestigious scholarship that she deeply yearns for.
我没事。
She's pretty down on her luck in the opening of the film, but she's relatively optimistic and she doesn't complain to her family about her struggles. A lot of us can relate to these circumstances. There's nothing necessarily wrong with what she's doing, she's just a bit stubborn. She has a very clear desire. She wants to handle things on her own and doesn't want to worry those around her. Awkwafina brings a very personal touch to her role. Casting her for this dramatic role isn't the obvious choice, but Lulu knew as soon as Awkwafina talked to her about her American background and that she was practically raised by her own grandma, much like the story itself, her performance came from a very real place. What makes her character so instantly relatable for audiences is her very real and human performance. Her isolation that she feels when interacting with her family, and how her character represents her personal ideals so strongly. And every character around her shares these same strengths. Her mother is strict and distant. In their first scene together, they're shown isolated in separate rooms. She's never satisfied with what Billy wants.
How many wontons you want?
5.
5? That's not enough.
Make a dozen then.
10's good.
She says she wants what's best for Billy, but in reality, she has her own insecurities and expectations from her family and enforces those expectations onto Billy as well. Billy's father loves his mother, but he isn't very good at showing it on the surface. he's both physically and emotionally distant. He likely has an inbuilt restraint on being honest, instead represses his feelings, and at times begins to question which side he aligns with.
不是不可以，不允许。
He's a character who's stuck between two worlds,
我们现在应该相信美国人吧？
but at the same time, he wants to respect his family's wishes.
我不能违背家人的意愿。
His brother, Billy's uncle, is one of the toughest characters in the film. He upholds his Chinese heritage,
我永远是中国人。
but he's moved to Japan, relatively far away from his mother.
是好久了。
He's also one of the more aggressive traditionalists that pressures Billy to not tell Nai Nai.
知道。
He can come across as repetitive and annoying, but he's never straight up the antagonist. As a remarkable twist, at the wedding, he's the first one to crack and begins to cry. Almost as though when he was constantly bugging Billy, he was really talking to himself.
我知道。
Then, of course, we have Nai Nai herself. Without a doubt, the greatest character in cinematic history. Given her character is the only one who's unaware of the reality of her eventual fate, she's the one who offers us such a unique perspective when looking at the film purely through her eyes.
跟奶奶一起坐，哈，吼。
This is the first time her whole family has been home together in over 25 years.
我跟你们说。
But of course, when viewing it from the intended perspective of Billy, knowing that Nai Nai is slowly dying, and contrasting that with how lighthearted her tone is,
我就是有点咳嗽。
and how much she seems to be having a wonderful time, makes us feel uncomfortable. Relaxing and having a luxurious spa day with your family
姑姑，你觉得我们应该告诉奶奶吗？
juxtaposed with your sick Nai Nai handling the stressful organization of a fake wedding.
没事没事，不去。
And so not only do the characters themselves, but the actual tone of the film has to marry together and maintain perfect balance.
I had all of these producers telling me they wanted it to be a broader comedy, and I knew that I wanted it to be humorous, but I didn't want it to be a joke. I didn't want the family to be a joke. It's absurd only through the eyes of Billy because she doesn't understand.
As you know, a lot of Hollywood films these days tend to undercut a serious scene with a joke. But in The Farewell, Lulu boldly chooses to do the opposite, instead undercutting comfort and joy with soul-crushing grief. Where other films might build up tension with a sincere, emotional scene, and then break that tension with some sort of comedic levity. So when Lulu Wang decided to make her film about deceiving her dying grandmother as a comedic one, most people thought this was understandably questionable. Lulu has personally described that the scenario, the facade of the wedding, and the chaos that ensued as a result of the elaborate lie was oddly comical. So, logically, she wanted to make the film funny. And it's the way she maintains this balance in the structure of her scenes that makes this work so successfully. For example, the exercise scene begins with Nai Nai, well, exercising,
哈，吼，
where Billy eventually joins in.
哈哈。哎呀，你严肃点行不行？
Nai Nai makes fun of her for not doing it right,
傻孩子，吸气。
and once she does it correctly,
哈，哈，哈，哈，好多了，好多了。
they
好多了
celebrate and laugh together.
再来点劲儿。
But then they walk back to the apartment, and Nai Nai says this.
我也得坚持锻炼呢，所以我都这把年纪了，身体还这么健康。
And just like that, Billy and the audience are brought back to the unsettling reality.
保重了啊！
The wedding photo shoot scene is another example of this abrupt tonal shift.
回事儿，你说就不能做出像一对小夫妻那样吗？
This entire scene plays out as a conversation between Billy and Nai finally getting a chance to catch up with one another.
奶奶都没顾得上。
The conversation they have is lighthearted, funny, and visually pleasant to look at. But then, right before the scene ends, we're brought back to the truth.
等你结婚的时候，奶奶给你操办一个更大的婚礼。
In a way, the film is playing with the concept of conflicting perspectives. Not just in the film as a whole, but with its characters, its subject matter, and in the scene structuring and how it uses cognitive dissonance to its advantage. Where, again, as I said, a lot of films use this to wink at the audience, creating a cognitive dissonance where the film lapses and reminds the audience that it's only a movie. Whereas The Farewell undercuts its humorous scenes to remind the audience of the severity of the subject matter, pulling us further in, intriguing us, or even unsettling us. Because the dissonance we feel isn't as to whether the film is a film, but rather the dissonance is felt in the conflicting tones, which resonates with our dissonance with the conflicting perspectives that the film and the characters uphold. It's that perfect tonal balance that the film achieves in the delicate way that it's structured. But the film doesn't just succeed in a balance between tones, but it also tackles two different cultural perspectives and how they clash with each other. And the way it achieves this is purely through the film's visual language. What's noteworthy about The Farewell is its style of cinematography. Sometimes entire scenes play out with the camera just doesn't move. It remains completely still. But the film isn't trying to impress you with stylish wonders that make you think, how did they do that? Instead, it has an intentional style that makes you think, why did they do that? The way the film is shot is taking on a more observational quality in the filmmaking, which is, in my opinion, a really fascinating way to go about this. The obvious direction to take this would be to shoot it more traditionally. It's a personal story, so let's get lots of close-ups of faces and a lot of coverage to cut around. But instead, we often see scenes play out with one singular master shot, with no edits and running for an excessively long time. Sometimes it's hard to immediately identify something as being observational because it's normally a style that's attributed to documentary filmmaking. Chloe Zhao, another Chinese-American filmmaker, chooses an observational style in her film Nomadland, where at times it feels as though we're observing a real person's life amongst a specific social group, or even in the upcoming Stephen Karam film, The Humans, where every frame is shot like we're peering through rooms that we're not supposed to. In The Farewell, our lead character, Billy, is an outsider, and so therefore taking the outsider's perspective, like we're the fly on the wall observing the family's idiosyncrasies and attempting to understand them from an objective position, we're able to reveal the character's truths through the techniques of cinéma vérité, a French observational film style meaning truthful cinema. The irony being the truth that we're observing is in fact a lie. But where I think the film especially shines isn't so much where the camera moves or where the camera is placed, but rather simply where the subjects move in the frame and where the subjects are placed in the frame. The film primarily uses blocking to exemplify the underlying meaning. Take this scene, for example, where Billy surprises her family by showing up unexpectedly. The shot is stationary. There's no crazy dolly zooms to exaggerate reactions. There's no lingering close-ups of family members. Instead, everyone stands up and moves to a different part of the frame. An entirely aesthetic choice that favours showcasing the hierarchy, the dynamics, and the overwhelming family as a collective, and how it contrasts with Billy standing on her own. completely separate from them as an individual, a cultural clash just in 2 shots. Earlier, the scene where Billy finds out about her Nai-Nai's illness,
Your nan is dying.
there's this unique lack of traditional Hollywood coverage. And this is by design. Here, we have a series of shots that Lulu Wang herself has labelled the triangle shot. Billy and her father are first left to grieve together for a moment, not showing the characters' faces.
I need to call her.
You can't do that.
I need to go see her.
Can't do that.
And when the lie is revealed,
She doesn't know.
we get this shot, where Billy is out of focus and her father in focus. No close-up of Billy, but instead her mother steps in to form this triangle. And when we eventually get to see Billy's face in focus, the triangle appears again.
It's not the cancer that kills them, it's the fear.
And then again in the shot focusing on her mother. These 3 shots maintain this triangle formation, never holding a close-up of an individual character in a frame on their own, introducing the idea that the family is beginning to be seen as a whole, a collective. Even in this American family, in this American household, their Chinese heritage is pushed onto Billy as being more important in this situation, not just through the dialogue, but in the image composition itself. And we as the audience can feel this closing in on us too. And one of my favourite shots later in the film happens when the family all go to visit the grave of Nai-Nai's husband, Ye Ye. We have this long comedic bit where Nai-Nai wishes Ye Ye to bless the family, bowing multiple times. But then after, we get this shot. The family all walk away. Nai-Nai talks about wanting her ashes scattered in the ocean because of how scattered her family are all over the world. And the members of the family all begin to scatter, taking different paths out of the graveyard, challenging this lingering presence of the contrast between these different cultural values and how they clash, and allowing the visuals, through not only the cinematography, but also the blocking of the scene, to hold these meanings beneath the surface. But there's also this consistent underlying through line throughout the film, where once we begin to further examine the film, we're able to fully grasp what it's trying to say. For one, the title, The Farewell, obviously refers to why Billy is visiting her grandmother, to say goodbye.
如果他想说再见呢？
说再见，太痛苦了吧？
But the Chinese title is completely different. It's not a direct translation. In Chinese, the film is called 别告诉她 or Don't Tell Her, because for Chinese audiences, it may not be as much about Billy and her individual story of saying her final farewell to her grandmother, as much as it is about the urgency and tension as to whether Billy is going to tell her or not. There's a reason that the titles overlap each other in the way that they do, because both cultural perspectives and analysis on the film are relevant and important. Maybe in different ways, but by the end, the film isn't so much about siding with one culture or another, but rather it's a human story and how we cope and handle things in different ways. And the film doesn't shy away from giving us these 2 different perspectives and allowing them to add layers to the film that might otherwise not be there if the film was designed to be just for one specific audience. The film relishes in being a clash between 2 perspectives. It's a fundamentally multifaceted film because it's inherently a Chinese-American film. At times, it's almost as though Lulu took some notes from horror and thriller films, where her longing to reveal the big lie is held in suspense. Every little look Nai-Nai gives, we're on the edge of our seat. Like she's the suspicious villain that's going to find out the truth, and for Billy, the family unit is the intimidating monster that's watching over her, to make sure she doesn't find out. No matter where we're from, no matter our perspective, we're anxious about the choice Billy is going to make constantly. We're waiting for that big moment where she stands up in front of her entire family and shuns them for their deceptive lies. But remarkably, that moment never happens. Instead, much like Billy confronted her own family about her perspective, she, and in turn the more westernized audience, are finally confronted with a different perspective on why we lie.
因为你把生命看成是个体的，东方人是把生命看作是集体的。你想告诉奶奶的事情，是因为怕担责任，因为这个责任太大了。如果你告诉了她，你就没有负担了。我们之所以不告诉奶奶的事情，就是为了分担她的思想压力。
Billy's perspective is shattered. We learn alongside her. The reality is that there is no right or wrong. There are only different perspectives. Do we want to tell Nainai because we think she deserves to know? Or do we want to tell her because it will be easier for us? It's a grey area. In the West, and particularly America, people do things that align with their ideals. And there are laws that say that each and every person has rights. And these rights include being told when you're going to die.
这是 illegal.
It's an ethical choice that simply aligns with the belief that every individual deserves to know the truth. But Billy and Lulu, and by watching the film, we are thrusted into a situation where our ideals aren't the central focus anymore. We're in China. It's different.
不一样，不一样。
啊，那怎么会不一样呢？肯定是在美国会更好些吧？
就是不一样。
I'm pretty sure a lot of other Americans would feel the way that I felt, that if somebody's gonna die, it's their right to know.
Yeah, but we just think that's not your business. You not live with her, and so.
Okay, but do you understand where I was coming from? Do you understand why I was conflicted?
Yeah, I know, but that's China. That's a different world, okay?
My mom told me about an old Chinese belief called chongxi. Chong means to rinse out and xi is joy, so chongxi is the belief that you can wash away a misfortune with joy. Even though this term was never used while planning the wedding, that's essentially what we did.
Billy's perspective shifts through her understanding. The choices this film made in an attempt to tell its story in an observational style, the objective perspective, turns out to be fallacy. It's not objective. It's truly subjective. And that's by design, because Billy and a lot of Western audiences perhaps went into this film, into this scenario, with preconceived notions that their stance was going to be proven right.
When this whole thing started, I felt like the only rational person in my family. The lone Westerner defending my grandmother against old-fashioned beliefs.
But that doesn't happen. We have to accept it. Our individualist mindset isn't the only way of thinking. And so, in the film's climax, Billy makes a difficult choice. And so, Billy is a part of the lie. She's accepted her role in the family and respects their decision. She may not fully agree, but she understands it's out of her control. Billy, the character who began the film, wanting to have complete control over her life decisions, trying to remain independent, struggling with money, quitting her job, even avoiding playing piano because it was something forced upon her by her family.
不谈了。
But when telling Nai Nai the truth was out of the question for her, she struggled to handle the guilt. Suddenly, the pressure is laid on her to carry this difficult burden. Billy didn't believe it was morally good to lie. But the notion of the different perspectives and what is a good lie versus what is a bad lie underlies this entire film. The title is a lie. The opening shot is a lie. The beautiful landscape is only a painting. Billy lies to her grandmother multiple times.
我戴了。
Some small.
我奶奶。
And then the lies escalate.
怎么了？
我没事儿。
Nai Nai lies too.
那是什么声音？你在哪儿？
在你小姨奶家呢。
She even lied to her own husband.
爷爷得癌症的时候，奶奶也是这么瞒着他来着。
Are these lies okay? It's just people not wanting their loved ones to worry. What makes the big lie in the story so wrong? The film asks us, can we draw that line between a good lie and a bad lie? Should we draw that line?
Isn't it wrong to lie?
I mean, if it's for good, it's not really a lie.
I mean, it's still a lie.
It's a good lie.
The morning after the wedding, Billy and Nai Nai have one last conversation. One last moment that they can share together.
不要给我钱。
And it's in this scene where Billy finally decides to tell Nai Nai the truth.
我没拿到奖金。
真的？你才知道？
上周我没告诉你，因为我不想让你担心。
And with that, Billy has stopped lying to herself. Some people might come away from this film unsatisfied. What was the point? They went through with the lie. They didn't tell her. And I've seen people say that they think this film is boring and that nothing happens. There's no character growth. But we know for a fact that Lulu herself struggled to convince studios that the point of the film wasn't these greater external stakes. The film is about Billy and her personal growth. It's about reconnecting with family, coming together to celebrate the life of a loved one. It's about how no matter who we are and what we say on the outside, we always have something hidden inside of us that we need to let out. Billy, who's been so adamant against lying the entire film,
how are you doing with money?
I'm fine.
Finally admits to herself that she isn't fine and takes this last opportunity to speak directly to her Nai Nai, to open up, to tell the truth, and hear her offer one last piece of advice.
我不担心，你会没事的，孩子。奶奶呀，是过来的人，我得告诉你啊，生活中啊，总会遇到很多困难，但你一定要想得开，因为生活呀，不光是你去做什么，更是你如何去做。一个人的精神支柱非常重要，你会成功的。
你真的好了吗？
真的呀，奶奶给你撒谎干什么？傻孩子。